Hare Krishna. So today we will resume our discussion on the 8th chapter, Attaining the Supreme. So we had completed up till the 5th verse. So today we will start with the 6th verse. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tajate antakalevaram tam tam eva iti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So, if you remember in the previous verse, Krishna had spoken about the importance of remembering him at the time of the death, right? The Antakalecha Mameva Smarana Mukta Kalevaram, right? That whoever thinks of me at the time of death attains a nature like me. Right? So, in this verse, now Krishna is extending that to say that this does not only apply to Krishna, but to anything. So, whatever state one remembers. So, Krishna uses the word yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Right. So, whatever is the object of meditation at the time of giving up the present body, the person will acquire that body in the next life. And the underlying logic is the same, that a person's meditation at the time of death is actually a result of the person's meditation during his lifetime. The two cannot be different. Now, Ajamil was obviously an exceptional situation, which is why we discuss his pastime in the Bhagavatam. But typically, the meditation during one's life translates to the state of the mind at the time of death. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example of Maharaj Bharat, who was a great personality, Mahabhagavat, but living alone in the jungle, he got attracted to a deer, a doe, and so intense was his attachment that he gave up all his spiritual practices. And once he accidentally slipped and fell and died, and while he was dying, he was thinking of the deer, so he got a body of the deer. Right? So Prabhupada says that if one is transcendently absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, spiritual, not material. Therefore, chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is the best process for successfully changing one's state of mind, of being at the end of one's life. Okay, moving on to the next verse. 8.7. Tasmad sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmaryudhaya cha mayyarpita mano buddhir mame vashasya samshayah. Therefore, Arjun, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So Krishna starts this verse with Tasmat, therefore, which indicates that he is now presenting a conclusion. So in the previous two verses, he talked about two possible situations. One is that Antakalecha Mameva Mukta Smaran Kalevaram, that one who dies thinking about Krishna, and then he acquires a nature like Krishna. And the second situation is that one dies thinking of something else and they acquire that nature. So of the two, the preferable is to go back to the spiritual world by dying thinking of Krishna. So that's why Krishna says Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu. Right? So he is saying that you should always think of me in the form of Krishna. Now if you note, he does not say that you think of me at the time of death. Right? So that he already said in 8.5. Now he is saying Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu. At all times think of me in the form of Krishna. And from this we can understand that if one lives the life absorbed in thinking about Krishna, then naturally he will think of Krishna at the time of death. Right? So Krishna does not even mention it here because it is a natural sequitur. It's a foregone conclusion. So if you are Sarveshu Kaleshu Mam Anusmara, that if you are always thinking of Krishna, then quite obviously you will think of Krishna at the time of death. Now Arjun might misunderstand this and say that Krishna, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to the jungle and just meditate upon you. And if I spend my entire life meditating upon you, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Mam Anusmara, I will have met this condition. So Krishna adds over here, says Yuddhayacha Maya Arpita Manobuddhir. Right? He says along with this you should do your prescribed activities. Right? And the reason, of course, is so not to say that meditation on Krishna only with prescribed activities will take you back to Godhead or put you in the position of thinking of Krishna at the time of death. But Krishna has made this point many times over, that simply meditation is very, very difficult. When he talked in chapter 6 about the yogis, when he talked in chapter 2 about the Falgu Vairagya, many times he made this point, that the nature of the senses are to be engaged, the soul is active. Right? So he's not making that point explicitly here. Explicitly he has made it in the past. Implicitly it is understood here. So he's saying that while you perform your prescribed duties, for all the reasons that I've said in the past, as to set an example for other people, to make advancements yourself, to protect yourself from fall down. So he says that Mai Arpita Manobuddhir. Like so, mana is mind and buddhi is intelligence. So from mind comes decision, and from intelligence comes determination. So Krishna is asking us to use the mind to decide to act, and use the intelligence to be determined in meditation. So two things are coming here, is performing a prescribed duty while meditating. So Krishna says use the mind to act in such a way that you perform your prescribed duties, and use your intelligence to develop the determination to meditate on me. So by the combination of mind and intelligence, one gets the ability to act and also think of Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada says that this instruction is very important for all men engaged in material activities. The Lord does not say that one should give up prescribed duties or engagement. One can continue them and at the same time think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. This will free one from material contamination and engage the mind and intelligence in Krishna. By chanting Krishna's name, one will be transformed to the Supreme Planet Krishna Lok without a doubt. Okay. Next verse. Okay. Verse 8. Abhyas yoga yuktena chetashananyagamina paramam purushamam divyam yati parthanuchintayan. He who meditates on me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Partha, is sure to reach me. So, similar point, Krishna is speaking in a little bit more detail over here. This is essentially repetition for the sake of emphasis and also for bringing forth a little bit more of detail. So, once again, we see that the Lord is emphasizing on constant remembrance through one's life, which will automatically result in remembrance at the time of death. Now, how does one constantly remember Krishna through the life? So, Krishna gives some insight into it. He says that abhyasa, one should practice. What should one practice? Chetashananya gamina. That one's mind and intelligence. Chetash means consciousness. We see Prabhupada translates to mind and intelligence because together they make consciousness. So with one's mind and intelligence or one's consciousness unswervingly, without any deviation, is fixed. Where is it? Where is it fixed? Yoga. It is fixed in connection with the Supreme Person. So Krishna says Paramam Purusham, with the Supreme Person. And the result is that one acquires a nature like the Lord. Right? So the acharyas say that this indicates Sarupi Mukti. So Sarupya means having a form similar to the Lord or other types of superior liberation. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example. It is mentioned in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam that a grassworm confined in a hole of a wall by a bee always thinks of the bee in fear and enmity and later becomes a bee simply because of such remembrance. So similarly, when a devotee constantly thinks of Krishna, not in fear and enmity, but in love and devotion, then the jiva will acquire a nature like Krishna. And actually, so this verse is spoken by Narad Muni to Yudhishthira Maharaj, and Narad Muni goes one step further and he says that even if a person thinks about Krishna constantly in fear or envy, like Kamsa was thinking in fear, Shishupal was thinking in envy, whichever mood one thinks, but as long as they're thinking of Krishna, they will acquire a nature like Krishna. So we see this is very similar to in the 6th chapter when Arjun said that it is very difficult to control the mind. Then Krishna says it's difficult, but he says abhyasena to konteya vairagya. Right? So he talks about that the ability to control the mind comes from abhyas and vairagya. So the abhyas over here is for smarana. Right? So there are 9 processes of bhakti: Shravana, Kirtana, Smarana, Vandana. So smaran is meditation, and by constantly practicing, one will develop this mood of na anyagamina, that without being deviated. So when we chant, then our mind is anyagamina, that is constantly being distracted. But that does not mean we give up hope, because Krishna says abhyasa yoga yuktena. And he says that by constant practice. So we chant 16 rounds a day, we chant every day, we chant for years and decades, and then by that constant practice, then our mood becomes more and more na anya gamina on the paramam purusham divya. Right? And then Krishna gives the assurance for the result. He says, "O Partha, such a person is sure to reach me." Okay, let's go to the next verse. Next verse. Kavim Puranam Anushashitaram Anoraniyam Sham Anusmaredya Sarvasya Dataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parastat. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and is transcendental beyond this material nature. So Krishna provides a little bit more detail in terms of how to meditate. So in the previous verses, Krishna had made this point: best is to meditate on me. If you meditate on me, you will automatically think of me at the time of death, and when you think of me at the time of death, you will acquire a nature like me. And then he starts explaining that best way to meditate on him is by using one's mind and intelligence. One uses one's mind to do one's prescribed duty. One uses one's intelligence to meditate. Now, what to meditate on? Right. So, in 5 verses, from 8.9 to 8.13, Krishna talks about the process to meditate. Right, so this is an example of Yoga Mishra Bhakti, where very similar to Astanga Yoga in 6th chapter, where the focus was more in terms of the general practice of yoga. Here the focus is specifically practicing yoga to meditate on Krishna. Right? So the whole process of withdrawing the mind, controlling the senses, and having full control on one's thoughts, then one thinks constantly on the Lord. So in the next 5 verses, Krishna speaks about Yoga Mishra Bhakti, and to some extent he also speaks it to showcase its difficulty, just like he spoke the 6th chapter. But Yoga Mishra Bhakti is a branch of Astanga Yoga where the focus is Krishna. Right? We had said in Astanga Yoga, one can also focus on impersonal Brahman, or one could also focus on Paramatma, or one could also focus on something material. Right? So this is specifically Astanga Yoga that is geared towards Krishna. So Krishna gives his 10 qualities that one can meditate on. Right? So he says that meditate on me as Kavim, as one who knows everything. One who is Puranam, means Puranam literally means the oldest of everything. Contextually what it means, the origin of everything. Then Anushashitram, the most merciful teacher. Anushashitram literally means controller, but in the verse what it means is one who is controlling by teaching mercifully. Then Krishna says that he is Anu and Sarvasya. So he is the smallest of the small and the largest of the large. He is so small that he can actually enter into the core of the soul, which itself is very small. And is Sarvasya, that he can actually within himself hold infinite universes. Then he is Dhataram, maintainer. He supports everyone. Right? And how is all this happening? That is Anu and Sarvasya and Dhataram. Krishna says Achintya, inconceivable. That accept the fact without trying to understand why. Because Krishna is beyond our senses, beyond our comprehension. So, what does it mean? The eighth quality is Aditya Varna. That Aditya Varna means self-revealing. That we understand Krishna to the extent that he reveals himself to us. So for some, Krishna is completely Achintya, to the point that they are atheists or demons. But to the devotees, Krishna is still Achintya, but he is also Aditya Varna. That there are certain aspects of himself that he reveals that attracts the heart of the devotees. And while Krishna is Anu and Sarvasya and Dhataram and Achintya, Krishna says Rupam, that I am ultimately a person. I have a form. And what is that form made of? The 10th quality is Parastat. The form is completely spiritual. It is completely transcendental and beyond material nature. Right? So, as one successively meditates on these qualities, then one gets an understanding of the greatness of Krishna, and Krishna reciprocates by Aditya Varnam, by revealing more and more of himself. Okay, next verse. Okay, verse 10. Prayana kalena manasa chalena bhaktya yukta yoga balena cheva bhruvor madhye pranam avesha samyak satam param purusham upeti divyam. One who at the time of death fixes his life here between the eyebrows and by the strength of yoga, with an undeviating mind, engages himself remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion, will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the continued description of Yoga Mishra Bhakti. So this is technically known as Shat Chakra Yoga. And in Shat Chakra Yoga, the yogi, they raise their pran in the Agya Chakra. So Agya Chakra is the area between the eyebrows. And in that state, they leave the body. So Krishna says that Prayan Kale, that at the time of death, with an unwavering mind engaged in bhakti, with constant remembrance of him, when one leaves the body in the way that has been described, Shat Chakra Yoga, by raising the pran in the area between the eyebrows. So the question is that how does one attain the strength of this practice? And Krishna says through yoga balena, that by long practice of the process of yoga, one becomes adept at Krishna says Bhruvor Madhya, that is Agya Chakra. One becomes adept at the ability to raise one's life hairs to the Agya Chakra. Prabhupada in the purport writes that the use of the word Yoga Balena is significant in this verse because without practice of yoga, whether Shat Chakra or Bhakti Yoga, one cannot come to the transcendental state of being at the time of death. One cannot suddenly remember the Supreme Lord at death. One must have practiced some yoga system, especially the system of Bhakti Yoga. So even though this is a yogic process, but it is mixed with bhakti, because in the last verses Krishna has placed himself in the center. In the verse right before that, Krishna talked about the 10 qualities of him that the yogi should meditate on, right? And by smaran on the guna, one then attains the rupa. So one attains the person. So without bhakti, all processes are useless. But bhakti is not dependent on any other process, which is why Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they recommend taking exclusively to the process of bhakti. Okay, next verse. Verse 11. Yad aksharam vedavito vidanti vishanti yad yatayo vitaragaha yad icchanto brahmacharyam charanti tatte padam sangrahena pravakshaye. Persons who are learned in the Vedas, who utter Omkar, and who are great sages in the renounced order, enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now briefly explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. So in 3 verses, Krishna is going to expand on the Satchakra Yoga that he had spoken about. So in the previous verse, he talked more about the final stage. Like one raises their life hairs to the forehead, meditates on the Lord and gives up the body. But Arjun might ask that how do we reach that stage? Right? So Krishna says that samgrena pravakshay, that I will explain it to you. Pravakshay means in summary. So what is the process? Krishna says, so vedavito vadanti. So yad aksharam. So aksharam stands for Om. So those who are Vedavido, those who are learned in the Vedas, right? So they, vadanti means they say yad aksharam. They chant Om. So that is the process there that they follow. Any prerequisites? Yes. So Krishna says that vitaraga, that they give up all kinds of attachments, lust. So he says they follow celibacy, and yadichanto brahmacharyam charanti, that desiring this brahmacharyam charanti, desiring this perfection, they follow this process of practicing celibacy and chanting Om. And so Srila Prabhupada says that in the Vedic system of knowledge, students from the very beginning are taught to vibrate Om and learn of the ultimate impersonal Brahman by living with the spiritual master in complete celibacy. In this way they realize 2 of Brahman's features. Right? So the 2 features of the Brahman is that it is eternal and it is indestructible. So, well, actually, 2 features. One is that the Brahman's sound representation is Om. That is one feature. And the second is that it is eternal and indestructible. Okay, let's move on to the next verse. Okay, verse 12. Sarvadvarani samyamya manohridi nirudhya cha murdhanyatmana pranam asthito yogadharanam. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life hair at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. So this is essentially a restating of the points that Krishna made in chapter 6. Right? The only difference is that here Krishna is explicitly talking about himself. Right? So Srila Prabhupada comments that this Sarvadvarani Samyamya, that this process of so Sarvadvarani is essentially the senses. So they're called doors to the body because through this the body engages with the external world. So one who can control all the senses. And in the 8 stages of the yoga, this is the stage of pratyahara. So pratyahara is when the senses are withdrawn from the sense objects. So all the senses are fully controlled and they are not allowed to engage in sense gratification. Okay, so moving on to the next verse. Verse 13. Om etekaksharam brahma vyaharan mamanusmaran yaha prayati tyajan deham sayati paramam gatim. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. So this is the concluding verse on Yoga Mishra Bhakti. So after being situated, which means that after doing what was said in the previous verses. A previous verse talked about continuously practicing, controlling the senses, meditating on the qualities of the Lord, and vibrating the syllable Om. So this verse talks about what happens next. Right? So Om itya ekaksharam Brahma. So once again a glorification of Om. It is the Eka Aksharam. So Ksharam means that which is fallible or destructible. Aksharam means that which is indestructible. Eka Aksharam means the one syllable word. So Om is single syllable which represents Brahman. Right? So Vyaharan Mam Anusmaran. That one is constantly chanting the name Anusmaran and meditating on Krishna. Right? So we see this focus on practice, long process of practice, and then the result is ya prayati tejan dehan, that when such a person leaves his body, sayati paramam gatim, that he attains the supreme destination. So what is the supreme destination of the person? It is Salokya Mukti, that the person essentially gets to reside in the same planet as Krishna. Srila Prabhupada writes that it is clearly stated here that Om, Brahman and Lord Krishna are not different. The impersonal sound of Krishna is Om, but the sound Hare Krishna contains Om. Right, so this is an important point that Srila Prabhupada makes, that Om simply represents the impersonal aspect of Krishna, but Hare Krishna represents the full personal form of Krishna, not just the form of Krishna, but Krishna with Radharani, and part of that is Om. So when one is chanting Hare Krishna, one is also chanting Om. And the chanting of Hare Krishna does not require this intense practice of meditation. And the other difference is that even if a yogi, after many lifetimes of practice, is able to control the senses, chant Om, and then leave the body with the Satchakra process by raising the pran between the eyebrows and leaving the body while meditating on Om, the destination, the Paramam Gatim, the highest destination that he gets is Alokya, which is in the spiritual world, but it is simply residing in Krishna's planet. The person may or may not get the personal association of Krishna. But Prabhupada says that the devotees of Krishna enter Krishna planet Golok, Vrindavan, right? And where they participate in Krishna's Leela, they get personal association of Krishna. Prabhupada also says that for the personalists there are also innumerable other planets known as Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky. Right? So for those who worship the personal form of Krishna, there are many destinations according to the mood. If they worship Krishna in Aishwarya Bhav, in the mood of opulence as Lord Vishnu, then they go to Vaikuntha, which is presided by Lord Narayan and his consort Lakshmi Devi. And there the predominant mood also is Aishwarya. And if they worship Krishna in a more intimate mode, then they go to even the higher destination, which is Golok Vrindavan. And there Krishna is there as a small boy doing leelas, being naughty, interacting with the devotees in a very, very personal way. And so Srila Prabhupada takes this opportunity to also glorify the process of bhakti. So we'll stop here. In the next set of verses, Krishna will further emphasize on the consequence of remembering him at the time of death. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.